1, 2, 1, 2, 3.
Today on episode number 441 of the School of Podcasting's morning announcements, which you can find at schoolofpodcasting.com/441, where I will have PDFs of everything we did today, as well as if you'd like to buy a Kindle book of what we're talking about today, you can find that at schoolofpodcasting.com/441. And that's the only call to action today, because today we're talking about your favorite podcast. And I want to thank Ray Ortega from podcasterstudio.com, podcastersroundtable.com, for forwarding me over a tweet by Seth Godin. Now, Seth Godin, super famous marketing author, probably in this arena known for his book Tribes. He wrote a blog post, and it's called, "Is Your Niche Too Small?" There's no such thing as a niche that's too small if the people care enough. If you think you need a bigger market, you're actually saying that the market you already have doesn't need you, depend on you, or talk about you enough. You might not need a bigger niche, or niche, take your pick. You might only need to produce more value for those you already serve. And so I thought that fit in today, because today we're listening to people who provide so much value that their audience has said, this is my favorite show above all others. And in some cases you'll hear where it's people who have held that title for multiple years now. So from me, I say for all those people spending hours configuring Edgar to send out hundreds of tweets per hour, and for those of you who are spending time hunting down strangers to write down reviews of your show in iTunes, and for those who are doing a daily podcast with enough content for maybe a weekly show, you might only need to produce more value for those you already serve. So today we're going to hear people who are obviously providing value. All right, and as we kick things off here, I want to remind you that all the links that we're talking about, all the different websites you can find at schoolofpodcasting.com/441 or schoolofpodcasting.com/2014 favorites. And these are played in no particular order except for one, and that is the person who submits their favorite podcast first this year. That person is Nick Suberling, who does a bunch of podcasts over at spnt.tv. And this is interesting because one of the things that people, again, are looking for is information you can't get anyplace else. Listen to this. Take it away, Nick.
Hi, Dave. This is Nick Suberling from Inside the Jungle and spnt.tv, letting you know what my favorite podcast is. Those of you may know me from my podcast, Inside the Jungle, which primarily involves and talks about the Cincinnati Bengals and American football. But believe it or not, I am a massive, massive soccer fan. And my favorite Barclays Premier League team is Manchester United. And the only place I get my coverage of Manchester United is through the 606 podcast produced by the BBC over in England. It is a weekly call-in show where fans of different soccer teams from around England can call in and have their voices heard. You get a lot of passionate fans. You get to hear about teams from different leagues, and they cover leagues outside of the Barclays Premier League. It's really fascinating, and it's a cool show. And it's the only way that I can really get the soccer coverage that I crave that we don't get here in the United States. So for me, my favorite podcast is the 606 podcast produced by the BBC.
Thank you, Nick. Again, when you can't get the information, it's probably available as a podcast. Very cool. Thank you, Mr. Nick. Next up, we have Ben.
Hello, Dave. This is Ben from modernselfprotection.com. And if I only had to pick one podcast to listen to, it would be the Modern Self-Protection Podcast with Jack Spirko. If I was stuck on a desert island, a survival podcast would be nice, wouldn't it? All puns aside, I really like it. It's a 5-day-a-week show. The host is, well, he's jumping up and down, excited all the time. But
notice that. Part of the reason, the way it's delivered. Just saying.
It's not your normal survival show. Yes, there's some of if the zombies march and the whole world ends, things you can do to survive. But his tagline kind of says it all. The things we can all do to live a better life if times get tough or even if they don't. He does whole shows on business, stuff on survival, on planting gardens, on building food forests, on making your life better where you are. He's even done an episode on how to be a better employee, just to make yourself a better person. It's a really great show. Go check it out at thesurvivalpodcast.com. And I keep listening every day, and I've been listening for 4 years because it just motivates me to get up and do something and make myself and the world a better place.
4 years, one of the reasons it's inspiring. You'll hear people say, here he's saying to live a better life. Other people said to be a better person. One person said it keeps me positive, inspiring, motivational. Kept this guy loyal for 4 years.
This is Ben Branham from Modern Self-Protection. You can go check out the blog at modernselfprotection.com, and you can check out my podcast, Modern Self-Protection Podcast. I do self-defense and self-defense firearms training for everyday people. No whiz-bang voodoo karate stuff, just stuff that you can implement in your life today. Go check it out at modernselfprotection.com.
That's the way you do it. Awesome job, Ben. Thank you very much. Bill Barris is going to chime in now.
Dave Jackson.
Yes.
The man.
Mm-hmm.
The myth.
Oh.
A legend in his own mind. Hey, Dave.
Hey.
This is Bill Barris from the Media Fiasco podcast.
Hey, Bill.
And I wanted to tell you about my favorite podcast.
All right.
And if you check my entry from last year, you'll note that things haven't changed much.
Yep.
My number one podcast is the Mike O'Mara Show. And they're at www.mikeomarashow.com.
Now, think about all the shows that have come from last year to this year, and Bill is still listening to the same one. Again, some of this is about loyalty, and there aren't that many podcasts that do that, for the record. You'll see this as we go through.
It is a daily show that never fails to bring a smile to my face.
Never fails. Again, it's not always about it's a value, but how are you making your audience feel? And so I put that down as funny, entertaining. Those are in there. So just keep your ears open for these.
Mike, Rob, and Oscar mix in-your-face comedy, pop culture, and their personal lives into a cornucopia of podcast goodness. That's right. I said cornucopia.
That's right.
Anyway, check them out at www.mikeomarashow.com.
That is 5 syllables. Cornucopia. Well done, my friend.
And now for my show.
All right.
Most people who listen hear me and think the wheel is turning, but the hamster's dead. I don't know if that's good or bad. But anyway, the Media Fiasco podcast is my irreverent and inappropriate take on news and pop culture. If you like weird, odd, or sick news stories.
And who doesn't?
And if sarcasm courses through your veins.
Sarcasm? I don't understand what sarcasm is.
Then this is the show for you. These are not the stories you'll find on CNN. Please check the show out at www.mediafiasco.com. And don't forget to tell me that I sent you. Thanks, Dave.
Thank you, Bill. Next up, Kane Dior, talking about his favorite podcast.
It's Kane over at the Adventure Frequency Podcast.
Hey, Kane.
We're a story podcast that comes out monthly. Every story is focused on adventure, blended with different genres from sci-fi to pulp, superhero, you name it. We've either done it or we have plans to do it. You can find us over at crusadersmedia.com, or you can just Google the Adventure Frequency Podcast and we'll come up all over the place. If I was stuck on a deserted island and I only had one podcast that I can listen to, one podcast loaded onto my iPod, that would have to be the Adam Carolla Show. Adam delivers a consistent show every week, blended with an intelligent, no-nonsense look at the world and how he would do things if he was in charge, melded with comedy and great guests.
There's that funny thing again.
He always manages to pull a great interview. That's the show that I always listen to, and my vote for my number one favorite show.
Cor, thank you so much, friend. Next up, one of my favorite entries this year. We talk about how important the name of your show is. Not so much, well, the name of the episode is good, but really the name of the show. Because this next show is someone's favorite, and they haven't even listened to it yet. One of my favorite people on the planet, Mr. Daniel J. Lewis.
Hi, this is Daniel J. Lewis. My favorite podcast is actually one I haven't listened to yet. And part of that's because I'm behind on all of my podcast listening. But the moment I saw this podcast, I knew I had to subscribe to this because it's the mixture of the two niches that I am the most interested in one single podcast. Get this. It's a mixture of entrepreneurialism and marriage advice. The podcast is The Business of Marriage with Dina Watt. Marriage advice for entrepreneurs. The moment I saw that, I knew I needed to subscribe to this because I love working on my marriage. I love working in my business. These two things don't have to be enemies of each other. And this podcast, just looking at the episode titles and seeing so many things that address certain issues I've faced or struggled with, this really appeals to me, and I'm really excited to start diving into this podcast. That's The Business of Marriage with Dina Watt, marriage advice for entrepreneurs. I can't wait to listen to this podcast. I think it will be my new favorite podcast. I'm Daniel J. Lewis from the Audacity Podcast. Please also check out my podcast reviews. That's where you can get your international Stitcher and iTunes podcast reviews for your show emailed to you automatically, as well as learn how to grow your podcast by getting more reviews. That's mypodcastreviews.com. Merry Christmas.
Yeah, we're talking about learning why people like your show. I love my podcast reviews. I use it. And it's cool because, again, the international thing is so cool because if you want to see what other people in other countries are saying, you have to go into iTunes and switch to that country. My podcast reviews, I just have them send them to me the day before I do my podcast, and that takes care of that. Daniel, thank you so much for the heads up on that. Again, find him at theaudacitypodcast.com as well. Next up, Dr. Dave. I met Dr. Dave back in probably 2005, 2006. And one thing I loved about Dr. Dave is you will hear Dr. Dave has, he doesn't sound like this. And it was really worried that, hey, if I don't talk like this, will people listen to me? And I said, dude, you sound normal. And here is Dr. Dave.
Hi, this is Dr. Dave of the Shrink Wrap Radio Psychology Podcast. And Mac Break Weekly is my must-have podcast fix. Leo Laporte and his guests have a wonderful exchange with one another. I'm a longtime Mac fan and like to keep up on all things Macintosh. They are an authoritative source, and I especially like regular guest Andy Inotko, who writes for the Chicago Sun-Times and is a longtime Mac journalist. And he is extremely bright, quick, clever, and funny. And by the way, I would love to have you check out my podcast, which once again is the Shrink Wrap Radio Psychology Podcast, in which, as a psychologist myself, I have for the past 9 years conducted in-depth interviews with world-class authorities on a wide variety of psychological topics. You can find my website at shrinkwrapradio.com or on iTunes or Stitcher or other fine purveyors of podcasts.
Dr. Dave, thank you so much. Again, all these links you can find at schoolofpodcasting.com/2014 favorites. Next up, we have Al Holtz.
Hi, Dave. It's
Hey.
Al Holtz from What's Up on Earth, the podcast that gets you caught up on the week in movies, TV, sports, and online videos. You can find the show at whatsuponearth.com. After going through the queue in Podkicker on my phone here, I'd say my favorite is the Popcast with Knox McCoy and Jamie Golden. This podcast covers a variety of pop culture, including movies, music, TV, celebrities, whatever happens to strike the two hosts as fun or relevant, that's what they'll go over that week. And Knox and Jamie, they're a great pair. They often are kind of playfully insulting each other, just enough to make it funny, but not really annoying. And that is really appealing to listen to that.
There's that funny thing again. And also, he's more or less talking about chemistry here.
The podcast website is knoxandjamie.com. Thanks, Dave. Thanks for the opportunity to give you this info, and thanks for all the great podcasting information you've provided us.
Thank you, Al. Again, you're going to hear that word funny, entertaining coming up a lot. And like I said, the other thing is the value. You'll hear later where people talk about listening to podcasts and you have to take notes. I am blessed to do a podcast with a guy named Eric K. Johnson, better known as the Podcast Talent Coach. We do the Podcast Review Show. And this is a podcast where we actually dissect your podcast head to toe, and we actually bring you on the show with us to go over. It's kind of like getting two consultants in one. If you're interested in getting your podcast reviewed, go over to podcastreviewshow.com, and you can find Eric over at easy for me to say, podcasttalentcoach.com. And here he is, the one. And actually, this was last year. This was my favorite podcast to listen to, and I still listen to this podcast. I'll get to my favorite at the end, but I just thought, well, I'm going to pick a new one. I think it's just going to be my rule, just to be weird. Here's Eric.
Hey, Dave, it's Eric K. Johnson with Podcast Talent Coach. You can find me at podcasttalentcoach.com. Just send it in my favorite podcast of 2014. My favorite new one that I've started listening to this past year happens to be the Solopreneur Hour with Michael O'Neill. You can find him at thesolohour.com or solopreneurhour.com. Either one will get you there. I love Michael's podcast because he does interviews with a lot of the standard interview guests, but he does it in such a way that it's wonderfully conversational. He doesn't ask the standard questions. He truly listens to the guests' answers and gets in a deep conversation with them.
I'm going to stop you right there. Notice what he said. Not the same and deep questions. So this is something I noticed through here. People talking about going in deeper into that and not being like everybody else.
It's lighthearted. It doesn't deal strictly with business. It deals with life in general and just having a great time creating work that we love. It's the Solopreneur Hour podcast with Michael O'Neill. Find him at solopreneurhour.com. And you can always find me online at podcasttalentcoach.com. Dave, I want to thank you for everything you've done for podcasting, not only in the last year, but since you started back in 2005. You're a true ambassador to what we do, and I wouldn't be where I am today without everything you've helped me do and helped me accomplish. So thanks for that, and thanks for all you do for podcasting. Have a great 2015.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Always appreciate it. Always a pleasure to work with that guy. Super nice guy. We have a lot of fun. And again, if you want to get reviewed, go over to podcastreviewshow.com. Next up, the one and only Sergeant Fred, who called this one in, so it sounds a little different than everybody else's. But here's Sergeant Fred from strugglingentrepreneur.com, and I believe he's talking about his skills in screencasting and podcasting. Here is Fred Castaneda.
Hi, Dave. This is Fred Castaneda from the podcast called Skills in Screencast and Podcast.com. And I wanted to give you the absolute number one podcast that I feel is for me. The podcast is called No Agenda, and you can find it at noagendashow.com.
And this is one of the podcasts. This was Fred's favorite last year as well.
Adam Curry and John C. Dvorak. What's it about? It's about deconstruction of the current events today in the news and political genre that details what is really happening behind the scenes, as well as overriding what we call the lamestream media, that is the mainstream media that tends to hide and disguise and also distract us with different types of agendas and also memes. They have no agenda. They're neither affiliated with any party. And the reason that I like it the most is because it provides me with the news. Therefore, I don't have to watch television, especially the lame shows that are on.
So there you go. Doesn't have to watch television, saving Fred time.
Lame news that are on with all the commercials. It takes 6 hours during the week to listen to it because there are 2 shows per week on Sunday and Thursday.
6 hours. So this is where I say there is no such thing as too long, only too boring. 6 hours, a 3-hour podcast, and Fred's like, yep, I'm consuming them both. Why? Because they bring value.
And I listen to it live. They have a chat room as well. And the good thing is that they are totally supported by their listeners, which they call producers, in the business model they have, which is called the value for value model.
I'm going to pause that a second. I've heard all these clips multiple times. Fred listens live 6 hours. That means he's not doing, you go 6 hours, well, it's 3 hours at 2x. No, Fred is listening live. Wow. Okay.
Therefore, that is my number one podcast. I know, Dave, that you are one of the listeners as well.
Yep.
So thank you very much.
In the morning.
Hope that you have a wonderful upcoming new year, and we'll see you at NMX.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Sergeant Fred. Super nice guy. a regular call-in person for the Ask the Podcast Coach show as well. Always good to hear from Fred. So again, you can find that at No Agenda Show. Find Fred at strugglingentrepreneur.com. And again, all the links, schoolofpodcasting.com/2014 favorites. Next up, we have James. Take it away.
This is James Meany from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
Hello.
If I could only listen to one podcast, it would probably be PFW in Progress, which is Patriot Football Weekly in Progress.
Nice.
It is a show about the New England Patriots football team.
There you go.
And it happens every Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday during the football season, and every Tuesday and Thursday in the off season. It is, I listen to it on Stitcher. It's broadcast out of Foxborough, Massachusetts. And most importantly, why do I listen? Because the guys are entertaining, funny, very.
There's those two words again, entertaining and funny.
Funny guys. And include
Hold on.
a little bit.
Let's go back.
The guys are entertaining, funny, very funny guys.
Very funny.
And include a little bit of football stuff. So, not only hearing about the Patriots, but New England sports and the NFL in general, and sometimes baseball and hockey too.
They're wicked. Go Pats!
But I think it's a great show, and I listen to it pretty religiously when I walk the dogs, at least 3 times a week during the season and 2 times during the off season. I do not have a current podcast, but
this is just a listener. Cool.
Hopefully in 2015, I'd like to start one called The Vocal Advisor, as I'm a vocal coach and live performance coach. So hope that helps. Thanks.
Thank you, James, and would love to help you with that podcast. Now, this next one, I was going to cut this out. She says some really nice things about me. Let's just play the clip, Dave. Just shut up. Here's Jennifer.
Hey, Dave. Jennifer Kaufman here.
Hey.
I had on my to-do list before I left the country recently to check in with you and make sure that I participated in your pick one favorite podcast feature. And of course, I didn't do it. And I was so thrilled to get back home, start catching up on episodes, and realize that you're still looking for submissions because I definitely wanted to participate. First, I just want to say a quick thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I was accepting submissions all through November.
Started co-hosting a show and now have my own show. So I am learning so much from the School of Podcasting Morning Report and from all of the information that you provide. And I thank you so much for that resource and just for your being you, for sharing your experiences and your stories with honesty and transparency. But
key there, honesty and transparency. You'll hear those come up again later.
In a kind and truthful way. So I look forward to hearing your new episodes every time they come across my app. So with that, I will give you my top podcast pick for 2014.
So that was pretty cool. So it gives you insights into what she's looking for. She listens to me, and because who doesn't love the Morning Report? And it's honest stories, again, to a certain extent. So there are things to learn from that.
My name is Jennifer Kaufman, and I am the host of the Delightful Life podcast.
All right.
We are a brand new podcast that can be found at jenniferkaufman.net. That's KAUFMAN, jenniferkaufman.net. The podcast itself is conversations and community looking for the delight in our day-to-day life, delight in being family and spending quality time with the people that we love, especially those of us with young kids who are growing way too fast, but also finding delight in the things that bring us joy, not to lose our identity in one thing that we're doing, a job or a career or one role that we play, but to find our purpose and our passions in life and kind of breathe life back into those. I think that if we do life together as a community, we can find so much more joy and find that our stories all help one another. So
it's a small world. I'm sorry.
It's new. It's just getting off the ground. Again, it's part of a project that's been ongoing, but it's been so much fun to bring a podcast to it and to get to know some of the podcasting community, which, as you know, is just full of amazing people. So with that, my pick for favorite podcast, if I could only choose one to subscribe to, I would choose the Live Your List show with my friends Ryan Eller and Jared Murr. It can be found at liveyourlist.org. And these guys are authentic and funny and fun and entertaining. And they talk about all kinds of things that will keep you entertained and not just in one niche. But the reason that this is the show that I would choose if I could only listen to one is because it's the kind of show that makes you be a better person, to be who you are called to be. They spend a lot of time talking about bucket lists, and in their line of work, they travel the world and talk to people about bucket lists, but they expand on not a bucket list for bucket list's sake, traveling the world just for traveling the world's sake, but what we can do to live out our list of goals and ideas, and what that list says about who we are as people, what that list says about our calling, what those lists say about how we can serve other people. They have amazing guests on, and they just talk about all different things through the lens of fulfilling your purpose, finding out who you're meant to be. Awesome show. I definitely think that you and your listeners should check it out. Again, that's the Live Your List show with Ryan Eller and Jared Murr at liveyourlist.org. Thanks so much again for all you do. Thanks for letting us share our favorite podcasts of 2014. Talk to you soon.
Thank you, Jennifer. And Jennifer.
Hey, Dave. If I had one podcast to be on a desert island, it would have to be Entrepreneur on Fire, eofire.com, where John Ali Dumas interviews people who have been successful and talks about their failures as entrepreneurs.
Isn't that a fun word? That's why he has eofire.com. This is John, by the way.
If I was on a desert island and had to be motivated every day and want to stay positive, that's the podcast to keep me going.
Keeps me positive. There's that inspiring thing again.
My podcast will be up in February.
Wait for it.
Next year, 2015, and it is writersauthorsonfire.com, where I will interview writers and successful authors about what their experience has shown them in getting published, in becoming successful with their writing efforts. Thank you for this project. It'll be very interesting to hear what everybody's favorite is. Thank you.
John, thank you so much for sending that in. Good luck with your On Fire podcast. Next up, we have another Jonathan. That was John. This is Jonathan with his favorite podcast.
Hey, Dave. This is Jonathan Chambers.
Hey.
Calling from the wonderful southern state of Georgia.
Hey.
And I've been listening to your podcast now for about a week, but
awesome.
Somehow it feels like I know you really well.
Did you guys hear that? That was such a cool... He's listened to me for a week, and he feels like he knows me. That right there is podcasting in a nutshell. That means I'm doing it right, because I talk to you like you're sitting across the table from me. So, Jonathan, thank you so much for that, buddy. And Georgia's a great state. Got to go to Atlanta many moons ago at the Varsity. I think it's the world's largest drive-in restaurant. Stone Mountain, the whole 9 yards.
Well, anyway, Dave, I've enjoyed the podcast. I've enjoyed listening to you and all the things that you have to say. So I wanted to share my favorite podcast with you.
All right.
The last couple of years, I've listened to a lot of podcasts. But I think the one that stands out the most to me, if I had to pick one, is a podcast called The Moment with Brian Koppelman. It's an ESPN podcast. And I'm a deep thinker, Dave, and I love asking in-depth questions about why and how and when about everything.
There's that deep thing again. And what I mean by this, tune into Jimmy Fallon or any of the late-night talk shows. Their interviews are extremely shallow. Hey, what's up? Tell me about your movie. Okay, let's play a game where you smack me with a giant hand. Okay, and here's our next guest. So this is deep stuff. And this is what really, Jonathan loves.
Really to a fault, I'm sure. But I found a kindred spirit in Brian. He's incredibly genuine. He's transparent. He's focused. He's extremely flexible, on the fly with his guests, big and small. In fact, the first episode I heard of his was his stellar interview with a guy that some of you may know, Seth Godin. In the same episode, he mispronounces Seth's last name, but he recovers quickly and then goes into what Seth later describes as one of the best interviews he's ever had done. He even told Brian that he was an awesome interviewer, and that is a huge statement from somebody like Seth Godin. So anyway, I love Brian's style. I love his personality, the questions that he asks, his ability to intimately connect with his guests. and draw out really the philosophy behind why they do what they do and what makes them tick and how they think. I love that kind of depth. And Brian seems to nail it every time. And so, again, the Moment podcast with Brian Koppelman is probably my favorite podcast so far. But listen, Dave, I love your podcast again. I appreciate everything you're doing. I'm an aspiring podcaster myself, hoping to launch by the end of this year. I've been really killing it and working hard for 6 months of research and trials.
6 months? Come on.
I'm hoping to launch my own podcast. I'm excited.
You can do it. Now, here, listen to this. I'm going to rewind this just a little bit.
One podcast. I'm excited. I'm scared.
Nothing to be afraid of. Now, this is, we all hate the number one fear of people, talking in public. What's the worst that could happen? You're going to look stupid. By who? You don't have an audience yet. So jump in the water, my friend.
But I have faith that I'm going to be able to do it.
Yes.
If I can just stick to it. So I appreciate all the tools you've given me. I look forward to the next couple weeks of information. And by far, Dave, I wanted to tell you and encourage you that you definitely meet your own criteria for a good podcast. You are very useful and very interesting in your content. So thanks, Dave. I look forward to everything else. Again, Jonathan Chambers in Georgia, signing out.
I'm not sure why I love the fact that some of these are people that don't have a podcast yet. I think it's cool when you're just a listener. It's cool that you have a podcast because we're all listeners. But very, very cool. Thank you so much, Jonathan. And as always, if I can help you at all with your podcast, we do have those step-by-step tutorials at the School of Podcasting that take a lot of the fear out of it because you just go a little bit closer, a little bit closer. Next thing you know, boom, you're in iTunes. It's very, very cool. Next up, this is, again, one of the podcasters who is listening to the same podcast last year that he did, or this year that he did last year, and this is my buddy Ken Kassler.
Hi, Dave. This is Ken Kassler of the podcast Thinking Outside of the Box. Myself and my co-host Karen Lamphere put a weekly podcast out focusing on bioregionalism, thriving in our bioregion. It's all about Northwest sustainability and localism issues, and it's a public service podcast.
There you go. Service podcast, serving your community, because, come on, what was that again? Biolequialism or something? Almost as fun to say as entrepreneur. And he's serving his communities out to tell people, hey, here's a better way you can, here's a way to improve your life. So awesome, Ken. Keep up the good work.
My favorite, man, it's a hard one.
It is.
Because there's a lot that I listen to for entertainment, and there's some I listen to for information. Yours every week.
Thank you.
I listen to. But I'm going to choose, if I'm on a desert island, I want to listen to Nora Young and Spark. It's from CBC, and it's an informative, often funny.
There's that funny word again.
It's well-produced show about technology and how it affects our lives. So that's it. Hope you're having a great day. Ken Kassler again from the podcast Thinking Outside of the Box. You'll find it on Stitcher, iTunes, and all them places. And thanks again, Dave, for all you do.
Thank you, Ken. And again, one of the things that Ken said last year is one of the reasons he listens is that woman has a great voice, and she does. Ken originally had sent in a clip with a clip of the show, and I went, no, just need you. But, so there's again, when we talk about loyal audiences, this is somebody, think again of all the podcasts that have come out, and Ken is still listening to Spark. That's the one he's taking on the island with him. Next up, the second half of our female respondents, member of the Cleveland Podcasters Meetup. Find us at clevelandpodcasters.com. It is Kim. Here she is.
Hi, Dave. This is Kim from On the Table Podcasts, which you can be found at onthetablepodcasts.com. I'm really torn about what's my favorite podcast. See, I never miss you, and I never miss a podcast help desk with Mike Dell. But if I were asked, my two favorites, which are tied and I can't pick between them, were probably the...
Hey, wait a minute. There's no ties. You can't have two.
Get It Done Guy by Steve Robbins. The Get It Done Guy by Steve Robbins.
Okay.
I love the way he tells stories with his efficiency tips.
Stories. It's a common theme you'll hear.
But I am currently saving up Starve the Doubts by Jared Easley because I'm going on a big road trip and I'm going to inflict all of them on my daughter for 18 hours straight.
18 hours of Jared Easley? I love Jared Easley. Yeah, okay. I could probably take 18 hours of Jared Easley.
Thanks a lot for all your help. I would not be podcasting if it weren't for you. Bye-bye.
Thank you much, Kim. I'm sorry. We have to take your first answer. We're kind of like Jeopardy on that. The Get It Gun Die. But yeah, if you want to have some fun, go check out Jared as well. But yeah, we would. I believe the judges would have to take your first answer. Next up, Matt McWilliams. He's a world changer.
Hey, Dave, it's Matt McWilliams from The World Changer Show and mattmcwilliams.com. And the answer for me is The Ray Edwards Show. You know, I think about if I could only pick one podcast, would I pick one about business? Or would I pick one about family life? Would I pick one about personal growth? Would I pick one about leadership? Would I pick one about marketing? Would I pick one about, my spirituality? And the answer is yes. So I think I just named 6 categories there. And so I would pick all of those. Well, there really is no other podcast that I know of. Maybe there is one.
We call that being unique.
But there's no other podcast with somebody who's an authority figure, in my opinion, in all of those areas as Ray's podcast. And that's why, I was so honored to have him on the show, on my show. And I got to ask him, what was it like to kind of go out on this limb and start this podcast it was part business, it was copywriting and marketing. And then this other aspect was talking about Jesus.
Yep. Ray talks about Jesus a lot on his show.
2 very different things. And you might bring somebody in.
Now, Jonathan Chambers, are you listening to this? This is Ray Edwards. Listen, what Matt talks up here about Ray. You guys here. Jonathan, meet. Yeah, there you go. Good. Awesome. Check this out.
Looking for the copywriting tips. And then they hear this message about his faith. And I asked him, were you scared to do that? And he said, I was scared to death. And I love that answer. He was scared to death, but he did it anyway because he felt that it was the right thing to do. And that's what he was called to do.
Now, so by Ray overcoming his fears, doing the show that he wanted to do, which is very unique. Ray is a world-class copywriter, but he throws in things that interest him. Fun-filled apps. I listen to the Ray Edwards show. Ray Edwards is one of my heroes. I got to meet him at New Media Expo last year. Really, really cool guy. But Ray's show is a little mix of everything, Ray, along with personal stories. And along with, he has a whole section on spiritual foundations. He did it, overcome his fear, and now you have Matt going, yeah, I'm sure glad he overcame his fear because he's my absolute favorite podcast.
So that's why I would pick Ray's podcast. Go to rayedwards.com and check out his show. It's unbelievable. And I find that it really is, if I had to pick one show, that would be it because it covers so many different areas. And it really is the one show that I never miss an episode.
That's what we call loyalty.
There are some where I skip 10%, some where I skip 2 out of 3. But I listen to every single one of them. And I listen to most of them right after they come out. And it is definitely the only podcast I do that with. Again, this is Matt McWilliams from The World Changer Show and mattmcwilliams.com. Thanks a bunch, Dave.
Matt, thank you, buddy. Met Matt over at the forums of Platform University. Super nice guy. And I find that really interesting that he shared that. So thank you very much, Matt. I really, to everybody, I really appreciate everybody sharing their insights. When I started this segment, I had a feeling I was going to get this answer a lot. Didn't get it as much as I thought, but get ready for a great set of pipes. Here comes Randy Cantrell.
My name is Randy Cantrell. Website is leaningtowardwisdom.com. Also the name of the podcast. My single favorite podcast has got to be, well, I'm going to join a whole lot of other people, I suspect, Serial, produced by the folks who also produce This American Life, which is another terrific podcast. Sarah Koenig does a great job. She is a masterful host and executive producer of Serial. I love it because it's masterful storytelling. It has great production qualities, including music and sound bites, and it is Well, it's serialized. It's an ongoing story. Just great, terrific, masterful. Must give an honorable mention to The Onion. They produce a podcast about the podcast Serial, aptly entitled Serial. Thanks for what you do, Dave. Happy New Year.
I don't know if you caught it, Randy, but last Saturday, which would have been, as I record this, the 20th of December, Saturday Night Live. Now, if you're not familiar from across the pond, that is a staple here in the States, did a parody of the Serial podcast. And to me, the fact that that was on Saturday Night Live was like a milestone. The fact that there were enough people listening to that podcast that Saturday Night Live thought they could do a joke about it, and enough people would be like, what the heck is this? No, there were enough people that the audience that was listening started laughing immediately. And Randy actually sent in later he wanted to change his answer. I'm like, nope, we got to take your first. But Randy actually, I'll say right now, Randy also listens to Mixergy because of the in-depth questions, and that is also one that he listened to last year. So Randy decided to change his answer because he thought a lot of people would say Serial. And actually, Randy, I think you're the only one. So there you go. Rem, you're up.
Hey, Dave, it's Rem checking in from the Sci-Fi Movie Podcast over at sci-fi-moviepodcast.com. And I would like to submit my favorite podcast.
All right.
Actually, it's a network of podcasts done by Jim and Aaron over at the Bald Move Network.
Check this out, baldmovenetwork.com. Rem's favorite podcast isn't a podcast. And this is where personality and delivery and believing in the host, knowing, liking, and trusting your host. Listen to this. Rem tunes into the podcasters, not the podcasts. Check this out. This is really interesting.
At baldmove.com. Now, when these guys are covering Game of Thrones, they're my favorite podcast. And then later in the year, when they're talking about The Walking Dead, they're, again, my favorite podcast. And right now, they're doing a rewatch of one of my favorite shows of all time, Breaking Bad. They're also doing other shows like Boardwalk Empire, True Blood, Mad Men, Gotham, and House of Cards. Now, what I like about these guys the most is that not only are they fans of the shows they cover, but they're also really honest, and they can be very critical when an episode fails.
There's that honest thing again. And I believe Rem is going to say objective, which is another thing that comes up a lot.
And I think that's really important. I like that objective critique. Yep. They're fun to listen to, and it really helps me get more enjoyment out of the shows that I watch. I also like that Jim and Aaron have left their day jobs, and now they're podcasting full time, something which many of us, myself included, would eventually love to do. Again, that's the Bald Move Network at baldmove.com. And myself, well, I'm the creator and the co-host of the Sci-Fi Movie Podcast. It's a weekly podcast where we pick a new or old science fiction movie like Close Encounters or The Avengers or Alien, and we talk about what makes a movie good or bad. We also talk about production facts around the making of the movie, some really great stuff, and we like to sprinkle in movie trivia, and most important, comments and feedback from our listeners. We sometimes agree, but often not, and that really makes for a fun conversation.
Yep.
You can find us at sci-fi-moviepodcast.com.
Awesome.
And Dave, I want to thank you so much for all of the work that you're doing at the School of Podcasting. When I'm trying to make my podcast better, you are my go-to guy. Thanks, Dave, and happy holidays.
I'm hoping I can keep my streak alive. At the past two New Media Expos, I've been lucky enough to just stumble across Rem having dinner, or vice versa. And if you are a sci-fi person, check out Rem's show. Rem had his show reviewed on the podcast review show. I'm not a huge sci-fi person because as a child I was forced to watch Star Trek, the one with Kirk, over and over again. And it kind of turned me off of sci-fi. But I do like it, but I'm not a huge fan. And when we talk about deep dives, check out Sci-Fi Movie Podcast if you're into sci-fi. Next up, Rick.
Hi, Dave. Hey. This is Rick Coast from the Evolution Talk podcast over at evolutiontalk.com. So my favorite show. This was an extremely hard one. I consume a lot of podcast content, but if I had to pick one or found myself stranded on a desert island somewhere, I guess I'd have to go with Mysterious Universe over at mysteriousuniverse.org.
Now, this is interesting. It goes back to that entertaining. Listen to his reason.
It's the only show out there that I actually pay for their extra premium content. As far as for why it's my favorite,
listen to this, okay? It goes back to this entertaining thing.
Well, my show's all about evolution and the story behind it. It's pretty much a fact-based show. With Mysterious Universe, I get to suspend my skeptical disbelief for a couple of hours each week and just relax.
Remember what I said about how does it make your audience feel in some cases, right? Inspiring, things like that. In this case, this podcast is helping Rick relax. I thought that was interesting when I heard this one.
Aaron and Ben are excellent hosts, and I love it when Wendy joins the show. She's great, too.
Here's that chemistry thing again.
They're all three of them. They're extremely entertaining. They work great together, and they cover everything from the paranormal to some of the more fringe stories in the world of science, which is what I'm into.
There's that entertaining thing again.
So that's my pick, Dave.
Thank you, Rick.
Thanks a lot, Dave. And good luck with the conference and everything else.
Oh,
take care. Cheers.
We're going to have fun at New Media Expo this year. If you haven't signed up, go to schoolofpodcasting.com/NMX. And I am the director of podcasting out there. And hope you guys are enjoying. I love these answers. I think it's great. Next up, we have. I'm trying to keep my mouth shut and just play the clips. We got a bunch. Scott Boyd is up next.
Hi, Dave. I'm Scott Boyd from Karate Tournament Tips and Tricks.
Right.
It's a small podcast that gives helpful tips to those that compete in martial arts tournaments.
I love accents. I'm sorry.
It can be found in all normal locations, iTunes, Stitcher, the whole lot.
Oh, buddy, you got to say your website. Again, I'll find out what it is. Schoolofpodcasting.com/2014 favorites.
Anyway, that's not what I'm here to talk about.
Oh.
I want to talk about another podcast that I love, which is The Unexplained with Howard Hughes. That's Howard Hughes, the English guy, not Howard Hughes, the multimillionaire that flew the spruce goose.
And is dead. That would be awesome. The first podcast by a dead guy.
It's a great show.
Although I bet Tupac has a podcast that's probably still putting out episodes.
That talks about all weird stuff, everything from Bigfoot to UFOs and everything and conspiracy theories. It's a really interesting show. His guests are really good. They're not complete wackos. Most of them are usually put out a book or something along those lines. And, yeah, so it's not over the top, even though some of the subject matter is a bit out there. He puts it together extremely well. He's a journalist by trade and a radio guy, and it just sounds great.
That does come up a lot. As I listen to these now, back to back to back to back, you know, sounds good, good production, things like that. So that does matter. You know, if you, as we're listening to that, think about all the people who said it sounds good, good production, well produced. So people are going to listen to you frying bacon underwater.
You've got great production values.
There we go.
If you like that sort of thing, I think you should go for it. It can be found at the unexplained.tv. Thanks, Dave. I love your show. Cheers.
Cheers, Scott. Thank you very much. Man, I'm such a freak for accents. My apologies. But as soon as I hear one, I'm like, yes, someone from across the pond. If you want a cool, this is one of the podcasts I started listening to in 2014. Talk about great information, great value, short, to the point, about your computer. Scott Johnson, Computer Tutor Florida. Here is what Scott likes to listen to.
Hey, Dave. Scott Johnson here from the Computer Tutor podcast at computertutorflorida.com. My choice for the one podcast, if I could only choose one, as I gave this some thought, I kept coming back to this one podcast, the one I listen to just about every day, and that's the Dave Ramsey Show. And in coming to that as my choice, I had to think about why I chose that one. And
because Dave talks about the stupid lottery is nothing but the stupid tax.
Essentially, it's because when that show comes on, I know exactly what to expect.
You're going to get Dave telling people to quit being stupid and eat some beans and rice and beans and go deliver some pizzas.
People are going to call in with their questions, usually related to money, and Dave's going to give them his common sense advice.
It's common sense, people.
He's smart, but he's not condescending. His answers are pretty entertaining. And
there's that entertaining thing again. I'm doing a really bad Dave Ramsey imitation, if I should say so.
since the callers are different every day, you never really know exactly what's coming up next. So that's my choice. It's not very original, and it's a show that's probably 99% of your podcast listeners have already heard at one point. But in my opinion, it's a pretty good show.
Now, it's not too long. Here's again, if we can I continue to do a bad Dave Ramsey? Yes, I can. It's the same thing. Dave's going to tell you to quit spending so much money and living beyond your means, but it's the audience that keeps it different. So hence the John Lee Dumas effect of the same topics over and over and over, but the guests make it different. And you get stories from people going, what do you mean I can't charge, McDonald's on my credit card?
And to learn something new about your computer, I would invite everyone to listen to my Computer Tutor podcast. It comes out every Monday morning, and each episode is about 10 minutes or so, and it's all in plain language, so we don't do any geek speak. And that's at computertutorflorida.com. Thanks, Dave.
Now, here's the other thing about Scott Johnson. When you deliver consistent, valuable content, like Scott does at computertutorflorida.com, I know when people ask me, hey, Dave, how do you download a YouTube video? I go to computertutorflorida.com. Scott did an episode on it. Just do a search. And you are seen then as a resource for people. And Scott that's one of my favorite podcasts. Next up, hey, this is from Stargate Pioneer. Meet Rem meet Stargate. You guys are really into the sci-fi thing. And here is his favorite podcast.
Hi, Dave. This is Stargate Pioneer from the Legends of S.H.I.E.L.D. podcast, which is part of the GonnaGeek.com network. My podcast is about the ABC television show Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and the general Marvel comic universe. I get to record weekly with my two lovely co-hosts, Haley and Lauren, and get to geek out on all things Marvel Comics. You asked us to provide you with our favorite podcasts this year, and I absolutely loved all of the recommendations last year, so I just had to contribute this year as a way of paying everybody back.
I am very, very happy that you did, by the way.
This is a tough question indeed, and honestly, I mulled this over ever since your podcast last year. There's so many great podcasts out there, it's near impossible to pick just one, especially after your episode last year. But I figured if I only had enough bandwidth each week to download one podcast, I'd have to go with the Star Wars Minute.
Now, listen to this podcast. This is amazing. The Star Wars Minute. Listen what they do. I was like, really? Seriously? Somebody listen to this. This is amazing.
In June of 2013, Pete the Retail from the Nerd Geek Dork podcast and Alex Robinson from the Ink Panther podcast set out to watch the original Star Wars movie and do a daily podcast describing each single minute of the entire film.
They go minute by minute. Really? I want to listen just to really? Okay, here's the next 60 seconds. Okay, I am your father. Okay, well, that was today's show.
Star Wars is such an iconic film that in many ways revolutionized the entire film industry, and Alex and Pete get to talk about the story of the movie, the making of the movie.
There we go. Behind the scenes storytelling. Man, those are in here a lot.
The filmmaking industry in general, the general Star Wars universe, and share everyone's experiences from seeing the movie for the first time and have a lot of fun doing it too.
Stories again of your experience behind the scenes.
It's entertaining, full of facts.
There's that entertaining thing again.
And embracing of the movie and the universe in general. So far, they have done A New Hope and The Empire Strikes Back and take some time off in between the movies to recharge their batteries and to come back to the next movie with new energy and enthusiasm. And I simply can't wait for their return next season for The Return of the Jedi. I just want to say thank you, Dave, for all that you do for the entire podcasting community. You've always been there to answer my questions when I've asked. You are always in my earbuds every week at the gym. And you are literally the first person I recommend somebody to contact or at least listen to when they tell me that they are interested in podcasting. I really appreciate your time, your effort, your expertise, and quite frankly, your heart and soul you put into teaching us how to podcast every week. I can't imagine being a podcaster without you around. Thanks for the opportunity to share in your community. My podcast, Legends of S.H.I.E.L.D., can be found at legendsofshield.com. Thank you again, Dave. And say hello to Binky and the Wiz for me, too.
I will absolutely do that, man. Merry Christmas to you.
And from the Wiz, happy Merry Christmas.
And I'm amazed that you have legendsofshield.com. That's quite the find. Very interesting. So, or you can check out all their shows at Gunna, as in Gonna, geek.com. So, Mr. Pioneer, is that how that goes? SP, thanks for sending that in. I really, really deeply appreciate it. And I actually annoyed myself some. You ever notice that when people are saying nice things about Dave, he doesn't interrupt? I am having fun with this, and I hope you guys are too. I'm such a geek on why people listen to podcasts. I find this incredibly informative. Hope you do too. Here is one again that same as last year, same show. And here we go.
So to answer your question, Dave.
Yes.
If I was left on a deserted island with enough fruit-bearing trees, good fishing nets, and sunscreen to preserve my skin, but could only listen to one podcast.
Don't forget the sunscreen.
It would be the Thomas Jefferson Hour with Clay Jenkinson.
Have you ever heard about this? Now, you might have heard about this last year. This is an interesting concept. Listen to this.
In the first part of his weekly program, he portrays Thomas Jefferson on various topics of his day and ours. The latter part is with Clay as himself, discussing the topic as if the third president were here in our time, and what and how he would conduct or react to the topic of the week. The program makes you realize what it took to build our government and what it means to keep it going, according to the founding fathers and Thomas Jefferson. And with Clay's sidekick, David Swenson, the program is, should I say, enlightening. Thanks, Dave, for your programming and what it has done for me. This is Terry Norda from the Discovering America podcast. You can find me on iTunes and Stitcher, and my web address is discoveringamerica-history.com.
Terry, thank you so much. And yeah, you are one of the few that are still listening to the same pod, and that's cool. That, by the way, there's nothing wrong with that. Couple more left here, and you've heard me say the name Steve Stewart numerous times on this program. And here's a embarrassing little story. Steve had sent me one, and I'm like, are you sure? And he said, yeah, check your SpeakPipe. So I went over to SpeakPipe and downloaded a message from Steve and hadn't listened to it because he told me what it was. He said it's the same as last year. And when I opened it, somehow Steve's went into voicemail purgatory. So the good news is his is the same one as last year. So we're gonna do a little rerun for Steve. Take it away, my friend.
Dave, it's Steve Stewart from the Money Plan SOS podcast.
Hey, Steve.
Check this out. I'm coming to you from my ATR 2100 that is plugged into a camera connection kit that goes into my iPhone using the Boss Jock app, which I'll then use to email to you as soon as I'm done recording.
That's pretty cool.
I mean, how cool is that?
It is pretty cool.
It's so awesome. I just love technology. Hey, you were asking about my all-time favorite podcast. If I was stuck on an island, what podcast would I want to hear?
Now, here's the interesting thing. Steve is another person here. Think about all the podcasts that came out this year. There's Serial and Startup and all the comedians and everybody else and Andrew Dice Clay and the one guy named what? He talks like this. Oh, what's his name? That guy. He used to be the Aflac duck. Gilbert Godfrey. Right. Gilbert Godfrey now has a podcast. And Steve, well, he stuck with his original.
Well, you know, I sat and thought about it for a while. I kept going back and forth with certain ones, but one kept popping up in my mind as my favorite. It's the Stacking Benjamins podcast. I'm big time in the personal finance scene. I listen to different shows that have to do with finance and personal finance just so I can find out what the enemies are saying.
We're going to talk about that in a second because Steve has a new show coming out. Actually, it's out. It's got 5 episodes.
I can correct them later. But there's one show called Stacking Benjamins. It's not just a money show. A lot of the topics have to do with money topics, but it's done differently. The main host is Average Joe. He has a co-host named OG who sounds just like Doug McKenzie from Bob and Doug McKenzie, if you remember them. Those guys. He sounds just like him. So just hearing that guy's voice cracks me up. But they talk back and forth, and there's just a nice chemistry between the two. But then they'll have a guy come in about a serious money topic. So you get the real serious analytical piece, but then you'll have this guy named Doug who comes in and just does a trivia question. They might have an interview with somebody. Then they might have a guest spot from somebody else, but he almost always has a roundtable discussion about a personal finance topic. So you get 3 or 4 different opinions about a certain topic in every show. And it doesn't stop there. At the end, then he's going to talk with OG again, his co-host, about movies. And there's usually an Easter egg at the end. So it's the show goes about an hour long, and it keeps changing. It's almost like a variety show. It's really cool. So Stacking Benjamins, my all-time favorite podcast. That's my vote.
Okay, so it's interesting because the thing that stays the same is the fact that you can't predict what's coming. That's an interesting concept.
I think everybody should go check it out just to hear OG. This sounds just like Doug McKenzie, who cracks me up. So this is Steve Stewart from the Money Plan SOS podcast. And yes, you can podcast too.
And the financialwellnessshow.com. And Steve, because I lost your file or it went into, email purgatory, whatever, I'm going to play a couple minutes of the brand new from Steve Stewart Financial Wellness Show.
It's time for the show that improves the health and wellness of your money. This is the Financial Wellness Show, featuring some of the most respected financial coaches and experts in the nation. Are you ready to get control of your money from beginning to spend? Well, let's do it.
Dude, I was so worried you're going to say, are you ready to ignite? Really interesting. Great looking website, by the way. financialwellnessshow.com. So, Steve, again, thank you and my apologies. That was hilarious. So I opened it up and it's like, I have a question about Simple Podcast Press. I'm like, oh, this is not your favorite clip. Last clip of the day, my favorite, you'll understand when we listen to Bill Delaney.
Hello, Dave. It's Billy Delaney. And this is my pick for the best podcast I've listened to. It's Dave Jackson and School of Podcasting Morning Announcements. There's a few reasons why I think this is most definitely the best podcast I listen to. First of all is the quality of the content. What you talk about, and in the structured way that you talk about it, and the way that you present it, it is funny, it is informative, it's definitely educational, it's definitely captivating. I want to hear it all, and I enjoy it. And the most impressive thing about it, your podcast to me, is you don't seem to be afraid to take risks. And in the position you're in right now, where you're very much public property, where a lot of people are paying attention to you, whenever you did the recent bit on the troll and you imitated a troll, that was pretty impressive. I thought, wow, that takes a lot of guts. It's done unfiltered. It's regular. You get what you're bringing for that time, and you're always on time. It's smart. You know what you're talking about. The most obvious thing that sets you apart and the podcast apart from everybody else is you're master of your medium. And you tend to disappear in it, and the content tends to be what is prominent. I've listened to a lot of other podcasts this year as I've begun to go my own journey. And I always noticed that most of the other podcasts was about the person having the podcast. And that's what separates you from them. You are cutting edge at times, as your recent escapades with some of the more unsavory marketing people have led us to see. You're indispensably helpful. I thought, what would happen if I stopped listening to Dave Jackson? I'd have to listen to 3 or 4 or 5 other people to get the same material. And that comes down to what can only describe it as it's unique. There is no other thing online in a time-shifted conversation like the School of Podcasting. And I've had this reinforced by having the good fortune of being at a meetup with you in Cleveland and watching the true heartfelt teacher's heart we wanted to put out and help and show. And that was a thrill to you. So, School of Podcasting, Morning Announcements, my number one podcast against anyone.
Billy, you make me blush, buddy. You really do.
My name is Billy Delaney, and I have a podcast called My Marketing Compass. And what we do there is we navigate sales and marketing once. It's a podcast that helps people learn how to find customers who want the things they sell, learn how to get them to buy from you, and come back for more on a regular basis. Thanks, Dave.
Billy, buddy, you make me blush. Holy cow. Well, I deeply appreciate that, and I appreciate every listener, but that always blows me away when somebody says, no, you're the one that I'm taking with me on the desert island. So, Billy, thank you so much for that. And I guess I should chime in on what my favorite podcast is. And it is a hard decision. And really, when I thought about it, the one that, for me, that again, is the one I go, oh, I got to listen to that. And it sounds weird because you think it would be a podcast about podcasting. It's not. This year, for me at least, it's Industry Standard with Barry Katz. Because if you've probably heard me say this before, if you can get me to think, and if you can kind of spur my creativity, you got me. So that's my favorite one, Industry Standard. Yeah, if you go to Barry Katz, Katz with a K, he's interviewed Dr. Phil. My favorite one, and again, we're talking about stories here, lots of stories in Industry Standard. And I think one of my favorite was the guy that produced Saved by the Bell. Yes, Saved by the Bell, and all the stuff he had to do to get that on the air. I found it really, really interesting. So, yes, I love Serial. Yes, I love Startup. But because I know most of his guests, my favorite podcast was Industry Standard. Holy cow, look at the time. We're at an hour and 10 minutes. Well, let me wrap this up. As I listen to the clips and I listen to the why, if we combined the word entertaining and funny, I had them separated out. I listened for specific words and I noted them. 49%. The number, we're grouping these by importance. 49% of the people mentioned value, meaning things I can use, easy to understand. 47% said entertaining or funny. Because to me, if you're funny, you're entertaining. 32% said personality, meaning they're objective, their chemistry they had, they were authentic, they were, the personality of the people. 32% people said they enjoyed the deep dive. In other words, in-depth information. 15% said behind the scenes, information that you can't get anyplace else. 11% said encouraging. They kept me positive. So in other words, they're inspiring. Another 11% said stories. People love stories, and I think with the introduction of Startup and Serial and Radio Lab and other, The Bitterest Pill, stories are going to become more and more popular. I think that's the key to it. And then the last one is, and this is the least important, was voice. Yes, people say I love their voice, but you notice it didn't come out at the top. So if you're thinking people will hate my voice, it's really not that important. So thank you to everyone who participated. Again, you can find the PDF of this as well as the Kindle book, everything out at schoolofpodcasting.com/441 or schoolofpodcasting.com/2014 favorites. Thank you so much. Until next week, when we kick off 2015, take care, class dismissed, and God bless.